Hello, friends, and welcome to Kiki's Keys to Unlocking Your Best Life, sharing stories of people who have been through their worst and are now living their best to give hope and inspiration to others. You can listen to us as you are right now live on KVOI The Voice, 10:30 a.m. in Tucson. Otherwise, if you are out of town, you can also catch our website at www.kikiskeys.life, or on YouTube or Facebook, you can just search Kiki's Keys. I am so excited to be here with y'all today. I have a special friend and guest in. Her name is Gail Petrillo, and Gail is such a breath of fresh air, someone I really am excited to introduce all of you to. She is a power networker, kind of been slowing down on that lately, though. I mean, a busy businesswoman as she runs First Impressions Image Consulting. She helps with resumes and negotiation strategies, networking skills, and wardrobe, closet transitions. You name it all. You can help anyone with their image. And even more so, she's an author. She wrote a book called The Accident, and she's here to share more about that story and to be part of our show. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you, Kiki. I'm so excited to be here.
I can hear it. Your voice, that excitement just like comes off you, and it's felt, and it's wonderful.
Well, I've been looking forward to this. I just got back from 3 weeks in Alaska, trip of a lifetime. And as you can tell, I'm struggling just a tad with my voice, but I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be your guest today.
Well, I'm so excited to have you here. As we've said before outside of here, that I've read your book twice now. It's actually a nice, easy afternoon read, but it's got so many powerful messages. First of all, about yourself and what you went through as a young person, what you did with that, how you've made a change in your life. But even more so, it's just really inspiring, and it has a lot of great points for others. So I'm excited to have you here talking more about it.
Well, great. Thank you so much. So, yeah, when I was a toddler, I was a giggly girl who was very outgoing, according to my parents. And at 2.5, my mom took me to a neighbor's tea party for the girls and their kids. And as I climbed up onto the table, there was the fresh pot of 40-cup pot of coffee sitting on the table, and fresh cookies that were fresh out of the oven. And as I climbed onto the table on the bench and saw the cookies, I reached for it and tipped the pot of coffee off the table and all over me. So I landed with 40% of my body burned. I was in the hospital for months. My parents didn't know whether I would live or die. Obviously, I lived. And what I'm learning at this ripe old age of 70 is that there was a reason I survived. And that was about 3.5 years ago, I decided to share my story for the very first time.
What brought you to that decision? What gave you the motivation to take the story that you've lived with for over 60 years of your life? What motivated you to put that into a book?
Yeah, so I came out of hiding. No one I grew up with, aside from my immediate family, no friends, no school kids, nobody knew about my scars because you don't see them. They're from my chest down. And so...
And you made a point, even as a young person, even as a 10-year-old at your neighborhood sleepover with your friends, or going through middle school and having to wear those already uncomfortable, ill-fitting, drabby, school uniforms and swimsuits that they had put you in. You put a lot of effort into hiding those scars for a long time.
For a long time. I remember there's a story in the book about going to my first slumber party, and I was hesitant about going, and my mom convinced me I should go, and I went. And all the girls, we had pizza and cake and whatnot, and all the girls started getting undressed and getting into their sleeping bags, and I went into the bathroom to change and came out, and all the girls looked at me like, "You're weird." Right? Why weren't you with us? And nobody asked, but I was never invited back to a slumber party, which was fine by me. So I did. All those years, I hid it from everybody. I covered the mirrors in my bedroom. I didn't want to see what I looked like, inside or out. I always felt like I was different because I felt as though people could see what I saw on the inside rather than see me for who I was on the outside. And so coming out of hiding during COVID, I met a woman who's fairly well known here in Tucson, Kathy Bell, and she has her own story.
Mm-hmm.
She and I met, and she convinced me that I needed to share my story to inspire and encourage other people with burns in particular to come out of hiding and share their stories, because we heal when we share. And she was very instrumental in me doing the book. And so my husband, who's an author, told me the way you write a book is you just sit down and you write what comes from your brain to your fingertips onto the keys. And so that's what I did. I wrote and wrote and wrote. And eventually I shared it with him, and he said, wow, this has to be published.
Mm-hmm.
And so together we worked on it a little bit. We sent it off to a really well-known editor here in town. She read it, and she was just kind of like starstruck and was like, this has to be published. This is great. And so I searched for public publishers, and a woman I sent it to at Book Locker called me within a half hour of getting part of my manuscript, and she said, I have to be the one to publish your book because my son was injured as a toddler, and so I relate to all the things that you and your parents went through.
Wow. And how did you come to meet her? I mean, was that just kind of one of those divine, came together, or did you seek that out?
Yeah, no, actually, we did some research. I knew I wanted not to totally self-publish, but yet I needed the help of a publisher who could do that. And so she has sort of a hybrid company.
Mm-hmm.
She was out of the South, and now they're out of the Carolinas, living in the mountains. And she's actually going to publish my second book, which will be ready to go in, I hope, October, and it will be published for the first of the year. And
how exciting.
Thank you. And just in time for hopefully the Tucson Book Festival.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Well, you got to keep us abreast of that. And you guys can follow on Facebook. That's Facebook at Kiki's Keys. You can follow along more about our Gail and our guests in the past and for stories in the future, because I definitely want to share that with our listeners. Let's go back to the accident. We'll talk more about your upcoming book, but you felt really motivated then to share your story, at first just more for yourself than others, but with that encouragement and the feedback from others, you're getting that response. And I understand that, because as someone who's read the book myself, I get that energy and that confidence in what your story is and how impactful it is to others.
Yeah, the feedback I've gotten has just been astounding to me. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never written a book before. I didn't have any idea what kind of feedback I would get. And from little kids, I read my book to 5th and 6th graders in schools, and they come up with the best questions. Like, what did your girlfriends do? How did you make friends? To what's it like now being an adult and being out of hiding? To just all kinds of really interesting questions. And then kids share, which right? Kids will speak out of turn and tell you, so my parents did XYZ. And it's just so interesting because you get the kids to talk.
Oh,
and
wow.
that's what's really important, right? Because then they're sharing and they heal. Because one of my favorite sayings is, lost my train of thought, sorry. One of my favorite sayings is that we heal when we share.
Yes.
And totally.
It's okay. It's quite all right.
Totally
We're about to
lost
come
my
up to
train of
break
thought.
anyway. So we'll give you a moment to take a breath, get some water in. We're going to thank our sponsors because without them, we wouldn't be on the air. And then when we come back, you're going to come up with that. Bet you as soon as we go off. And then we'll talk a little bit about how fear kept you from exploring this new side of yourself right after this. And we are back to Kiki's Keys to Unlocking Your Best Life, sharing stories of people who have been through their worst and are now living their best. Here with our guest, awesome energy, Gail Petrillo. I'm so happy to have you here. Your energy is just filling the room today. It's wonderful. Gail's talking a little bit about her book, The Accident. You wrote this in 2021, correct?
I did, yeah, after coming out of hiding after 60 plus years.
Wow. And in your book, you talk not only about your physical scars from the burn that occurred when you were 3 years old, but you also talk about the emotional scars and fear in general. And you had a lot of fears throughout your life. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Sure. So what I've learned is all burn survivors, and haven't we all been burned, right? Physically, emotionally, by something, whether by heat, fire, something someone said. But we all have those fears based on what we've experienced in life. And my fears were rational as well as irrational, right? So I never would light a cigarette because that's a way of getting burned. I wouldn't hold a sparkler on 4th of July. Pretty rational. The irrational stuff, which I'm still trying to figure out, is why I'm deathly afraid of snakes and other critters and heights and other things like that that don't make sense.
And
right?
as a child, you were more fearful to be away from your mother, to try new things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which was a huge change because they had said I was so outgoing when I was first born. And so we all faced fears. And when Al and I decided to move to Arizona, we knew we'd run across creepy crawlers, right? We have rattlers in our backyards. So I found a guy at the State University of Albany who was doing his thesis on overcoming fears and phobias. And I worked with him to overcome my fear of snakes because as he and I talked, once you overcome one big fear, it's easy to apply those same principles to overcoming other fears. And I use what I learned with him back 30 years ago today. Just in Alaska the last week, I use those bases for crossing bridges, which I would never have done. I do it in a car with trepidation, never on foot, and now I do it. And so part of what they teach you in overcoming these fears and phobias is repeat. Go back and expose yourself. So that didn't come out right, did it? Expose yourself to your fears. Challenge yourself with facing those fears. So, for instance, the first exercise for overcoming my fear of snakes was to touch one of those picture books. Remember those little golden books that had pictures of snakes in it, and touch the snake. From that, I graduated to touching a rubber snake, which Al will tell you took me weeks to be able to do.
Well, I know a lot of people have fear of snakes. Even knowing if it's fake, they won't go near it.
Right.
The thought of it is terrifying.
Yep. And the same with heights and crossing bridges and fears, like I said, of igniting things. Cooking on a gas stove. It took me 45 years to cook on a gas stove. Now, fortunately, we don't have to light the
pilot.
The pilot light, right. So that helps. And, of course, cooking on gas is far better than cooking on electric
stove. But as you
stove.
said, fear of things that can burn you made sense, having that traumatic experience at such a young age and getting burned by the hot coffee, having those physical scars. But to challenge those emotional scars or even those irrational fears, you had to make those little steps towards healing. And it sounded like you just started with what you could do and then build on to that.
Yeah.
Do you still apply those same kind of principles to life today?
I do. As I said, I just came back from a vacation in Alaska. I crossed bridges on foot. I did try the Capilano suspension bridge. I got my first 3 steps down, and then the bridge really started to sway, and I turned around and went back for another day.
Fair enough.
Right. So, we're not always successful in anything we do, but the important thing is to keep trying, to keep challenging yourself, because that's what we're here on this planet for, is to make a difference. I think we're here to make a difference in our lives as well as other people's lives. And by sharing those experiences, those wins, those challenges, those losses, we encourage people to go out of their comfort zone as well And
that's exactly what I picked up from it. I even made a note of a statement you made in the book. You said, "My hope is that my story will inspire others to find the courage to face and move past their biggest fears and challenges." What do you think some of those fears are that are universal amongst people?
well, I think I teach networking skills as part of my image consulting business. I think everybody is, well, it's been proven fact actually. People are more afraid of speaking in public than they are of dying. That's insane, is that not? And so I do a lot
The
of networking.
thought of getting in front of a group can feel like death to some people. No, I get
Absolutely,
that.
because you feel challenged. You feel like you're in front of people and people are going to
You feel seen.
Yes,
And-
yes, and that's
and vulnerable.
intimidating and vulnerability. And so when we walk into a room full of like the Marana networking breakfast, right? There's 150 people there, and
And
you
growing.
may know 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And so your first intention is to walk up to those 2 or 3 people that you know.
Familiarity.
Yeah, exactly. Comfort level, right? Comfort zone. And what I work with my clients is getting out of that comfort zone and meeting people outside of the group that you know. And it's easy because what I find and what I coach is people like to talk about themselves. So you don't really have to talk. You have to be really good at asking questions. So, what are you doing here today? Who do you know? What are you going to talk about for your 30-second speech? How can I help you grow your business? That's not really me talking. That's me getting someone else to talk.
Right.
And then the pressure's off of me. And I know that the talk will turn around and come back to me at some point, at which point I'm more relaxed. I've now built a rapport, and it's much easier to speak to people. So that's a big fear people have, is being out of their comfort zone, meeting new people, and especially.
Well, that's great that you can help them with that. Let's talk about the new book coming out
Yeah.
in October. That's only a month away.
Yes, well, it won't be out that soon.
Okay.
It will be going to my editor
Oh,
that
going to
soon.
the editor. Okay.
It hopefully will be a New Year's present
Alrighty.
in early January.
Well,
And
that's not
it-
that far off, though.
I know, it's true. It is The Accident on Steroids. I'm still
Okay.
playing around with the name, but it will be something along the lines of The Phoenix Rising, right? Coming out of hiding, sharing the things I've never shared before. The first book was really built originally written for kids. It isn't a kid's book per se, but it was more written in that genre. This book is written for adults.
Okay.
So that there are stories in there never told before that adults will relate to, whether it's their fears and phobias of meeting people, whether it's overcoming things like heights and snakes and speaking in public. But it's also sharing stories that were not kid appropriate, right? Dating.
Mm-hmm.
How do you date when you have a body full of scars? How accepting are people of those scars? There are other stories about my family because it's a tribute to my parents who taught me that I am strong. I have confidence deep within me somewhere, and it's finally showing its face. They instilled in me trust and compassion and empassion. And that's what I'm sharing with others today. So it's in large part because of my dad, who walked into a room and his smile just exploded in the room. And he made friends with everyone he met. And I wish I could have done that at a much younger age, but it's never too late. And I'm doing it in my 7th decade.
And yes, folks, she did say she is 70 years old. She sounds like she's got enough energy for 25-year-olds at this point. But you are definitely an inspiration, a huge asset to our community and to others. For those who have not already gotten it, you can go on to Amazon, Kindle. Is it at Barnes & Noble's?
It's not on Barnes & Noble. And the other way you can get it is to go direct to the publisher, booklocker.com/11593 for English, and it's also available in Spanish and on audio.
So that's English is book book locker, BOOKLOCKER.com/11593. And the Spanish version is booklocker.com/11681. Gail Petrillo, her last name spelled Petrillo, firstimpressions1.com. If someone wants to get a hold of you, can they call you?
Absolutely.
And what number would you like them to call you at?
It's 602-621-0042.
And Gail, if you had one word of advice, you could go back to that 3-year-old or the 10-year-old who was trying to learn how to process having these scars and go back to that young Gail. What would you say to her?
Smile. Smiles are contagious, and it's the good kind of contagious. And you win friends over by smiling. And it's a lesson I've learned and that I share with others. So smile.
Smile. That's awesome. And I am smiling. What you shared about your parents teared me up, guys.
Aww.
That's why I seem like a little perplexed for words. I am. That was just so touching to me. I hear that love. I can feel that energy and that protection that they gave to you. How do you tap into that now, later in life?
Well, it's hopefully getting a little easier. I lost my mom just 1 year ago. We moved her to Tucson 3.5 years ago during COVID. She was a week before her 90th birthday and died very unexpectedly. And I know she's looking down on me. I know she and my dad are both very proud of me. And I take that to bed with me every night, and I wake up with that every morning. And they together are the ones that push me through every day.
That's so great to hear. Thank you again, Gail, for being here. And Gail's husband's with us in the studio and waving at him. Thank you, Al. Gail Petrillo, the book is The Accident. You can find it on Amazon and on Kindle or Audible. And watch out for her next book. Thank you all for listening. You can catch Kiki's Keys on your favorite podcast media or on Facebook at Kiki's Keys or YouTube at Kiki's Keys Life. And we will talk to y'all next week. Till then, be the best you can be.